Right now, somewhere inside your house, there may be water sitting perfectly still, not flowing, not refreshing, just waiting. Most people never think about water once it disappears behind the wall. Why would they? You pay the utility bill, you replace the filter, you trust the system to do the rest. And for most of us, that trust feels normal. Water comes out when we turn the handle, the pressure feels strong, the glass looks clear, end of story. But the first time I stepped into an Amish farmhouse outside Holmes County, Ohio, I noticed something strange. No humming purification machine, no blinking control panel, no expensive treatment unit tucked into a basement corner. And yet the water tasted cleaner than mine. That was the moment something uncomfortable entered my mind. Maybe the question was never how advanced water systems became. Maybe the real question was why older systems worked without so much machinery surrounding them. Most modern homes treat water as a utility. The Amish treated it as a living resource. And that difference changes everything. Because water behaves differently when it sits. Movement protects freshness. Stillness changes chemistry. That is not fear talking. It is physics. Water moving through rivers behaves differently than water trapped in shallow pools. Nature teaches this lesson everywhere you look. Movement oxygenates. Movement refreshes. Movement prevents stagnation. Older builders understood this long before chemistry textbooks explained the mechanism. They designed around movement, not just convenience. And the first clue sat outside the house. The well itself. Most people imagine a well as little more than a hole in the ground, a place where water waits underground until a pump drags it upward. But older builders saw something else. They understood that a water source is only as reliable as the system surrounding it. And this is where modern plumbing and Amish design quietly separate. Modern systems depend on pressure. The Amish depended on gravity. That sounds primitive at first, until you understand what gravity gives you. Silence, consistency, and fewer mechanical failures waiting behind a utility door. The first Amish water system I examined used elevation as its engine. Water stored higher, movement below. No electronic logic deciding when life support should turn on. Only physics doing what physics has always done. And gravity alone was not the secret. Movement was only the beginning. Because moving water still needs protection. And this is where older builders became surprisingly sophisticated. The farmhouse I visited used 3 natural layers: stone, sand, and air. The stone handled drainage. The sand filtered moisture and impurities. And the airflow prevented stagnation. That final piece matters more than most people realize. Because filtration without airflow eventually becomes storage. And stored moisture becomes a problem waiting quietly. The Amish understood something building science later rediscovered. Water must move, and air must move with it. The first time I saw this system beneath the farmhouse, I expected something crude. What I found looked surprisingly intentional. Not random, not improvised, refined. And that changed how I understood the word simple. Because simple does not mean primitive. Sometimes simple means refined by generations. Modern engineering often solves problems by adding complexity. Older builders often solve problems by removing failure points. And that difference matters most when systems break. Because every machine eventually asks the same question. Who repairs me when I stop working? A failed pump. A damaged controller? A replacement part nobody stocks anymore. Modern systems work beautifully until they do not. And when failure arrives, complexity changes from convenience into dependence. Older systems face problems too, but they fail differently. You could see the problem, understand it, and often repair it without waiting for permission or expertise from somewhere else. The Amish answered that question differently. They built systems families could understand and repair with their own hands. And this is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable. Because this story is not really about wells. It is about dependence. Because once you begin paying attention to how water reaches a home, another question quietly follows. What else inside modern comfort depends on systems we no longer understand? Most modern systems work beautifully until they don't. And when failure arrives, convenience can suddenly become dependence. A failed pump, a damaged controller, a replacement part nobody stocks locally anymore. That is not criticism. It is simply how complexity behaves. Older systems face problems too, but they fail differently. You could usually see the problem, understand it, and often repair it yourself. That philosophy shaped more than Amish water. It shaped how they built comfort itself. And before continuing, I should answer something people often misunderstand. This story is not about romanticizing hardship. The Amish do not avoid every modern tool. That assumption misses the point entirely. The Amish I met were practical people. They used what worked. But they asked a question many of us stopped asking. Does this tool increase capability or replace it? That distinction matters. Because sitting beside that farmhouse well, I began noticing something strange. The system beneath it was not designed around convenience alone. It was designed around ownership, not legal ownership, functional ownership. A family that depends on water should understand the system providing it. And that idea feels surprisingly rare today. The first time I climbed beneath the farmhouse to examine the filtration structure more closely, I expected something rough. Maybe improvised. Maybe patched together over decades. What I found looked deliberate, carefully layered, carefully maintained, and unexpectedly elegant. The stone beneath the system handled drainage. Nothing complicated. Just gravity and spacing allowing moisture to move naturally away. Above that sat the sand. Not decorative sand. Filtration sand. Simple. Clean. Purposeful. Water passing through it slowed naturally. Sediment settled. Impurities reduced. And surrounding the entire system was something most homeowners overlook completely. Air. Moving air. That final detail may have been the most important of all. Because water alone is not the whole story. Moisture behaves differently when trapped. Airflow changes everything. The Amish understood this through experience long before building science gave it technical language. Water must move, and air must move with it. Filtration without airflow eventually becomes storage, and stored moisture creates problems quietly. The same lesson appears everywhere in nature. Streams stay healthier than stagnant ponds. Dry moving air protects structures better than trapped dampness. Movement protects. Stillness changes things. And suddenly, the design beneath that farmhouse no longer looked primitive. It looked observant, patient, refined by generations watching what worked. That realization forced me to reconsider a word we use carelessly. Simple. Because simple does not mean unsophisticated. Sometimes simple means complexity removed after experience proved it unnecessary. Modern engineering often solves problems by adding layers. More controls, more automation, more systems stacked behind walls. Older builders often approach the same problem differently. They asked, what could be removed? What failure point could disappear? What process could continue without supervision? And that difference matters most during failure. Because every machine eventually asks the same question. Who repairs me when I stop working? That question feels uncomfortable because many of us already know the answer. Someone else. Someone we call someone trained. Someone scheduled. Someone carrying tools we do not own and knowledge we no longer possess. Again, this is not an attack on technology. Technology is extraordinary. The issue is dependence without understanding. The Amish never rejected useful tools. They rejected helplessness. And sitting beside that farmhouse, well, I realized the system was never just about water. The water was only the visible part. The real system was trust built through understanding. A system the family could see, maintain, repair, and depend upon without fear. That may be why the water tasted different. Not because of magic, not because old ways are automatically better, but because confidence changes how people relate to necessity. When you understand something, you trust it differently. And maybe that is the real divide between modern comfort and older design. Not intelligence, not progress, but visibility. Because invisible systems create a different relationship with dependence. And that brings us to the hardest question people ask about systems like this. If simple systems work so well, why did we stop building this way? If simple systems work so well, why did we stop building this way? Part of the answer is convenience. Machines are easy. Push a button, pay the bill, and trust that the system above your understanding will continue working. There is comfort in that arrangement. And to be fair, modern plumbing brought enormous improvements to daily life. Cleaner cities, safer sanitation, reliable pressure, conveniences earlier generations could hardly imagine. This story is not about rejecting those achievements. It is about asking what we may have traded along the way. Because older builders designed around a different assumption that systems should remain understandable, repairable, and owned by the people using them. That philosophy shaped more than Amish wells. It shaped how they viewed responsibility itself. The first question was never, how advanced can this become? The question was, what happens when it fails? And that question changes design. A complex system can be efficient, but efficiency is not the same thing as resilience. Resilience means surviving interruption. Resilience means continuing when conditions become inconvenient. And sometimes the most resilient systems look surprisingly ordinary. That farmhouse taught me something uncomfortable. Many of us mistake complexity for superiority. We see wires, controllers, digital displays, and hidden equipment and assume sophistication automatically means improvement. Sometimes it does. But sometimes complexity merely hides vulnerability behind polished surfaces. Older systems carried their mechanics openly. You could see how they worked. And because you could see them, you could learn them. That visibility created confidence. And confidence creates independence. Before we finish, I want to answer the 3 questions people always ask about systems like this. The first question is safety. People hear words like sand, gravity, and natural filtration and assume primitive. But primitive and ineffective are not the same thing. Modern water treatment still depends on many of the same principles. Settling, filtration, movement. The science did not appear suddenly in a laboratory. Much of it began with careful observation. Builders learning from rivers, from soil, from moisture, from experience repeated over generations. The second question is maintenance. People often assume simple systems demand endless labor, but the truth is usually the opposite. Complex systems hide maintenance. Simple systems make maintenance visible, and visible maintenance often becomes easier maintenance. That does not mean effortless. Nothing valuable is completely effortless. But there is a difference between maintenance you understand and maintenance you fear. And the third question is practicality. Does this mean modern technology is the enemy? No. Technology is not the problem. Dependence without understanding is. The Amish never rejected useful tools. They rejected systems that made families helpless. That distinction matters, because sitting beside that farmhouse well, I finally understood what they were protecting. It was never just about water. The water was only the visible part. The real system was trust built through understanding, a system the family could see, repair, and depend on without fear. The Amish never rejected progress. They rejected helplessness. And maybe that is the lesson hiding beneath systems like this. Not that older ways were perfect. They were not. And not that every modern home should suddenly return to wells and sand filtration. That misses the point entirely. The lesson is simpler. Understanding matters. Because comfort feels different when you know how it survives. The well still works. The water still moves. And the knowledge never disappeared. It only waited for someone willing to look again. And maybe the most surprising thing I carried away from that farmhouse was not a new opinion about plumbing, It was a different question. Not whether modern life became too advanced, but whether we have become too separated from the systems that quietly keep us alive. Sometimes the most valuable knowledge is not hidden in complicated machinery. Sometimes it is waiting beneath ordinary things we stopped noticing long ago. And perhaps that is why the old Amish well stayed with me. Not because it belonged to the past, but because it reminded me that resilience, understanding, and ownership still matter. Even now,